Good morning, happy Sunday.
Happy Sunday.
We're going to go ahead and start with a word of prayer as we begin. Father in heaven, we thank you so much, Lord, that we have the privilege to be here this morning to study your word again. Father, we know that yesterday was a busy day and it was full, but clearly you have even greater things that you want to speak to us about. And so may our hearts be open. May you grant us understanding and wisdom through the scriptures, Lord, that we may be able to navigate sometimes the turbulent waters of a relationship. This is our prayer, and we trust that you will help this to be our experience as we offer this prayer from our hearts in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Now, one of the common questions that I get whenever we are asked about our relationship is, how did you know that Sebastien was the one, right? And while there are many things I could share about,
Beautiful face and
strong, that are personal to us or to our situation, this one thing that remains constant, and one thing that I always share is, as a question of reflection for the young lady, or usually the young lady, they're the ones asking, is if nothing were to change about this person, could you still see yourself happy? Could you still see yourself in love with them? Could you still see yourself able to make that commitment to cherish them, to cherish and to love them and to commit to them? Mm-hmm. And one story that always comes to mind is that of Abigail. You guys familiar with the story of Abigail? And she was my favorite character for a while because I thought, wow, a woman that has such wisdom. I want to be that kind of woman. But then I thought about it some more. How did she end up with such a fool? Right?
Go ahead.
How did you end up with such a fool to be so wise, but yet, who's the true fool in here? And that is something that we don't want. I don't want any of you to end up being Abigails, right? Where you're constantly having to make up for the other's inadequacies, right? Things that are common sense, common things, but yet he doesn't get them. We don't want to be Abigails in that regard. Some things just are very apparent that tell us we need to just stop.
That's right. And it reminded me years ago in camp meeting, the last camp meeting we were at, I was speaking to a young lady here in UK, and she had come to me about a relationship she was in for quite a while. And in this relationship, she realized that her relationship with Jesus had been suffering throughout the years of this courtship. And so she said, what should I do? And I'm like, well, what do you mean, what should you do? You're in a relationship with a Seventh-day Adventist, and you're becoming farther and farther from Jesus. What do you think you should do? And obviously, I told her, listen, you need to end the relationship. If it is not helping you stay and draw closer to Jesus, at least stay where you were when you started the relationship. But if you're spiritually worse off, now that you're in the relationship, that lets you know that this is a clear red flag. It is time for you to keep it moving. And so she was like, well, I don't know how I should do it. And I said, look, you need to call him today. You should just go out of the hall, go to your car, get on your phone and call him and let him know, listen, we need to end this relationship. It's not healthy for your relationship with Jesus, my relationship with Christ, and we need to part ways. And she said, well, should I do that over the phone? We've been dating for 7 years. And I'm like, what do you mean? She's like, well, I don't want to hurt his feelings. I said, that's so interesting that you say that, because all the years that you've been drawing away from Jesus, what about Jesus' feelings? So did you call Jesus on the phone? Did you kneel down in prayer and say, God, I'm going to get into this relationship and I'm not going to spend time with you in the morning. I'm not going to be praying to you. I'm not going to invite you into these aspects of my life. Did you do that to God before you started, or did you just start ignoring him? And she's like, well, I didn't tell God that. That wasn't my plan. It wasn't my expectation. You just kind of drifted. So I said, all those years that Christ, who died for you, this man never died for you. All those years that Jesus, who left all of heaven for you, but this man never left any heaven for you. You neglect the person that has given everything for the person to offer this little, penance that he can offer to your life. And in the end, he ends up making you worse. And so it goes to show the situation you can find yourself in if you do not recognize clear red flags and respond to those red flags. Mm-hmm. It's one thing to say, well, I identify that there's a problem, or, you feel like something is off in the relationship, mm-hmm. but for some reason you're persisting in the relationship. And one of the reasons why we perhaps do that is because of the culture embarrassment, right? You don't want to come to church, and now it gets awkward, right? She used to be dating Tino. Now Tino's hosting the weekend. And now she's like, oh, I don't want to come to the event, the relationship weekend, because Tino is there. I have to pick on him because he asked me difficult questions yesterday. So now Tino feels awkward, and then you go to potluck, and it's like she's sitting on the other side, and everybody knows you guys used to date, but now it's not worked out. And so you're like, who wants that drama, right? Nobody wants that awkwardness. So you'd rather just stick it out than say, you know what, my better judgment and reason is telling me this is not a healthy relationship. This is not helping me draw closer to Christ. This is not enhancing my ministry. And I need to just stop. I need to just step out of this relationship, and I need to move on. But because of cultural pressures and pressures inside the church, we feel like we have to persist no matter what. And that's what leads you into an Abigail and a Nabal situation, where you're going to find yourself married to a fool. And that fool is going to almost get you killed, or may even kill you, because there's no guarantee that David listens to Abigail. He could have decided, I don't care what you have to say, killed her, her husband, their whole family, and they lost everything because this clown doesn't know how to treat people that took care of them. Just that simple. And so I'm pretty sure she probably saw the warning signs, right?
For sure. That
Nabal was this kind of person beforehand, but somehow she ended up in a marital relationship with this individual. So our whole goal in this session is, how do you differentiate between red flags that are letting you know I need to move on, versus red flags that are also communicating, you know what, there are some challenges, but we may be able to work through these things by the grace of God. That's a very important question, would you not say? So let's go ahead and look at this a little bit from the Bible. So I want to use, for our purposes, to simplify this concept, is use two texts in the Bible from the Old Testament and New Testament about God and how God manages his relationship with individuals. So let's start in Genesis chapter 3. Genesis chapter 3. Genesis chapter 3, and babe, if you can start reading verse 22 to 24.
And the Lord God said, Behold, the man is become as one of us, to know good and evil. And now, lest he put forth his hand, and take also of the tree of life, and eat, and live forever. Therefore the Lord God sent him forth from the Garden of Eden, to till the ground from whence he was taken. So he drove out the man, and he placed at the east of the Garden of Eden cherubims, and a flaming sword which turned every way, to keep the way of the tree of life.
So let's notice here, God created Adam. We looked at yesterday that God put Adam in the garden. So here he desired a relationship with Adam. But obviously God had boundaries to this relationship. And God recognized exactly what Candice was talking about in the beginning. If nothing were to change, would you be able to exist with this person in a covenant relationship? And when Adam had become a sinner, when him and Eve had sinned and their nature had changed to the point that they were not going to change, God said, you know what? The Bible says, this man now knows good and evil. He now has tasted these things by experience. And his nature is now driven towards the tendency of wrong. He says, I have to drive him out lest he put forth his hand and eat of the tree of life, and he lives forever. And if he lives forever, in what state is Adam going to live?
Living in sin.
He's going to be living as a sinner. So God says, listen, I don't want a relationship with you where your whole nature is in rebellion against the very things that I value. This is making sense. God does not want to immortalize the sinner. We're not going to be able to coexist. I'm going to have to destroy you. I'm going to have to punish sin. And if I put you in a situation where you can never change, you will continue to live in this state forever. God says, I cannot allow this. And so in starting off and noticing that God recognizes that he gave Adam very clear instructions. You can eat of every tree of the garden freely, but of this tree, do not eat of it, for in the day that you eat of it, you will surely die. So God set a very clear boundary in this circumstance. And when Adam and Eve violated that boundary and betrayed his trust, he recognized that there had to be a separation between him and them.
So even with God, we see that there's a point where he says that I cannot, if nothing were to change here, I could not still love, cherish, and commit to you the way that I want to.
That's exactly right. So this is why we say when we come to Jesus, we can come as we are, but we are not to what?
Remain.
Stay as we are. So we're not saying that every relationship is a project. That is not the point. So we're not saying, oh, when he came to me, he wasn't coming to church, he wasn't studying the Bible, and you come as you are, but don't stay as you are. No. See, relationships is the opposite. Whatever you come as is what you're probably most likely going to be. So what that essentially is telling you is the principle that what you win them with is what you win them to. And I need to make this point, I guess, a little more plain. If you win a person by saying, oh yeah, we go out to eat, we're having worship, this person is interested in evangelism. So now you won the person by all these activities, interest in spirituality, interest in exercise, whatever it is, and they think, this is who I'm marrying. Then we get married, and all of a sudden, I'm not interested in health, I'm not interested in evangelism, I'm not interested in spiritual things. It's like, wait a minute. This is where we get the whole, I thought I married Rachel and I woke up with Leah situation, right? So wait a minute, what is this? And when people feel that way, it's because we do whatever it takes to win the person, not realizing that what we win them with is what we win them to. If that's how the person said, this is why I was interested in you, this is why I loved you, this is why I wanted to be in a covenant relationship with you, then that means you have to sustain and maintain that, which is why it's important to maintain who we are.
Yeah, I was going to say that's also a reason or why it's important for us to really come as ourselves. Many times, as ladies, we come, we want to put on all the makeup, we want to have our hair done perfectly all the time. There's nothing wrong with looking good, girls.
Amen.
Nothing wrong with it.
Nothing wrong.
But we know that we don't look like that all the time.
That's not true, babe. That's not true.
Good answer.
You look like that all the time. Listen. I think angels do your hair in your sleep.
Come to my house. But sometimes, that's just the physical. That's something very easy to address or to kind of pinpoint. But many times we put on this facade that we are a certain way. And then we get mad when we become comfortable and then we kind of let our hair down, let our froze out. And then the guy's looking at us like,
He said, what really happened, Lord? It's like, what's happened? Because all of a sudden, these become very clear red flags early in the relationship where you're like, this person's like, oh, he can't see me like this, right? She can't see me like this. Oh, in this situation, I remember one of the first times I heard Candis interacting with her mom on the phone. We were working in the office, and Candis is very nice, very polite, very giving, genial type personality. So I'm sitting in the office, and all of a sudden, Candis answers the phone, and all I hear is like, what? Why would you do that? That's just dumb. She's just going off on this person. I'm thinking, who is she talking to? And I'm like, I've never heard Candis talk to anybody like this. And then she gets off the phone. I'm like, so who was that? Because, I'm trying to understand if I'm interested in this girl. Is that going to be me in about 2 years from now? what? How could you do that? That was so dumb. It's like, and she's like, oh, that was my mom, you know, I don't know what she was thinking, blah, 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 blah. So it was very interesting.
I just have to say, my mom and I were good now, okay? That was a long time ago. Praise Jesus, His grace is sufficient. Amen.
It's true, they had a come to Jesus moment. But it also let me know that, you know, very early on in our relationship, I knew that Candis is the type of person that, okay, if you're not my husband, you know, you're not in my family, then, you know, I'll be very gracious, whatever decision you like. Oh, what do you think? I'm thinking about, you know, going here and staying out till 1 o'clock in the morning. Candis, okay, that's fine if you want to do that. But if you're my husband or my mom, this is going to be a different conversation. Hey, babe, I'm thinking about, wait, why are you trying to do that? So all of a sudden, if someone, you know, God understands some things have to stay between husband and wife. But for sure, I saw already that Candis is very jealous of what is hers. Right? Mm-hmm. That's just the way she is. She's like, I don't care if other people make dumb mistakes, but you can't make dumb mistakes. And I'm going to tell you it's a dumb mistake 50 times. And if you still make the dumb, I'm going to tell you it was dumb. And I told you that it was going to be dumb. Then I'm going to follow you around the house. I mean, we're not talking from experience. But, you know, praise God, keeps him from a lot of bad decisions. Because now when I travel, even without Candis, I hear my wife's voice. It's like, Sebastien, do not, you know, I remember I went to GYC and, you know, Candis is a germaphobe. So, you know, you got to take off your shoes like immediately upon entrance, you know, or she has like a laser that'll vaporize your shoes. And so I walk into the hotel at GYC and all of a sudden I'm like taking off my shoes like right at the entrance, just like slipping my shoes off, organizing. I can't sit on the bed with my street clothes. All I hear is my wife's voice, babe, don't sit on your bed with those clothes. Exactly. She's like, mm-hmm.
For your own good.
And so I'm posting on Instagram, my wife is in my head. It's like 2,000 miles away. But in this very same sense, this kind of dovetails into the opposite side, which is the fact that in coming and setting these very clear boundaries, you have to start by being 100% yourself.
Right.
You got to accept the fact that this is just who I am. This is how I am. Mm-hmm. And I don't want to be presenting something that a person thinks they fell in love with a person that doesn't exist. That's not a real person. And so I can work with it if I'm like, okay, I see who she is. I know what she's about. I understand what this is about. You know, Candis is not trying to be hurtful or disrespectful to you. She's trying to protect you from a mistake. And in this sense, I can get down with that. Even if, you know, sometimes it could be a little strong, you know, a little harsh. You're like, oh, that was cutting. But, you know, I can take it. You know, and then, you know, Candis, she's like, you strong? You strong? That's why. You got this. Pick up the pieces, you know. But in that sense, I appreciated that because, you know, a lot of guys, I remember before I expressed my interest in Candis, they were like, and Candis and I were already friends. They were like, oh, yeah, you know, I think I'm interested in Candis, and I'm thinking about this guy, and I'm thinking about who I know Candis to be. And they're like, Candis is so kind, and she's very supportive. And I'm like, yeah, because you're not her boyfriend. But if you were her boyfriend, I already know 5 things you're doing right now, Candis would be like, nah, that's unacceptable. And so in this sense, right, the perception that people can have is that, oh, this is who you are, this is how you are, but you don't recognize that, and this is a big point for guys too, is that women are very different in a relationship than out of a relationship. So it's like, yeah, you are mine. That's a different conversation than just a general friend, general brother, sister in the church. And yeah, she's going to be nice and respectful and polite. But, you know, when you are attached to her in a committed relationship concept, there are going to be boundaries, right? I have 3 daughters, so they're very clear about what lines they will let you cross and what they will not let you cross. And it's no different getting into the relationship. So to give a practical example, you know, like Candis and I talked about yesterday when we had the conversation about ministry. And Candis wasn't 100% sold on that at the time. Like, do I really want to do this? I'm not sure I want to do this. Even though it's a very awkward conversation, it's a very important conversation because she's expressing her honest feelings about it. Her honest, you know, fears and her honest apprehensions. I don't know if this is the lifestyle I want. I don't know if I want my husband to be gone for a week. I don't know if I'm interested in that. I don't know if I can handle it. So you're having the conversation, which tells you that if you're in a relationship and a person is constantly hiding and it seems like they agree with everything you do, they seem okay with everything that you say, they seem okay with everything. Oh yeah, you want to eat wherever you want to eat? I can tell you right now, that ain't going to happen when you're married. Oh, what do you want to eat? It's not going to be, hey, whatever you want to eat. Nah. You're going to be like, oh, let's eat Chinese. No, I don't like Chinese. It's like, because when you're married, Candace is like, oh, babe, I love Ethiopian food. I'm like, I'm not trying to have Ethiopian right now, not tomorrow. It's like, I just don't like injera. So she loves injera. Mm-hmm. So when we're going out, it's like, babe, I know you don't like injera, but can we just stop by the Ethiopian place, pick up my food, and then we can go get your food from this other place? And it's like that's what your relationship's actually going to be like. It's not going to be like, oh, sure, honey, because I think she's so fine and I want to make sure I please her and respect her. Oh, I respect, you want Ethiopian. But deep in my heart, I'm like, we get married, we ain't having Ethiopian. Like,
yeah. And we laugh, but it goes on the other side too, where guys are, because they want to please their girlfriend or what have you, they want to please her, so everything is kind of becomes like a yes man, right?
Yes.
Do you want to do this? Sure. Or, we say, yeah, I'd like to go here. And he's like, okay, yeah, let's go. Okay, I want to go here. Okay, I'd like to get this. And, after a while, that gets kind of tiring for the guy. Mm-hmm. But also, guys, we like somebody that can say no, push back a little bit, give us some kind of a boundary, too. Pull us back in check.
Be about something?
In check.
You saw that. In check. Hold on. She's like, let me temper it down, because Candace will not be put in check. That's for sure.
But with love,
With
but
love.
No, and it's so honest because no, just relationships, people that have come to us too on the converse, where guys are like, I've been always acquiescing to whatever she wants, and
yes.
She's not happy. Mm-hmm. And they're so baffled as to why isn't she happy? I'm giving her everything that she wants. And I'm like, because that's not what she wants. Right.
That's right. And so guys are like shaking their head confused. But here's the practical piece, right, from this. Number one, right, we see that God is not going to stop being God and valuing the things that he values simply because he loves man.
Right.
God does not lower his standard. Mm-hmm. He doesn't say, well, it's okay if you sin, if you commit adultery, I'll accept that one. No, God says, this is never acceptable.
Because this is who I am.
Correct. That's who God is. And if we are going to live in an eternal relationship with Jesus, is going to be living with him as he is, mm-hmm. based on the values that he has. So it's not so much that God is saying, listen, I'm going to be this way today, tomorrow, and forever. I'm not going to change. And for a level, and this is important for the thing you're talking about with guys, is that women like something they can say, this is predictable, this is dependable. I know that if he says he's going to be there at 3 o'clock, he will be there at 3 o'clock. I know if he says, listen, we're going to find a way to get there, he will find a way to get there. But when we as guys are constantly acquiescing and bending to whatever a woman wants, she's thinking, man, I could just bend this dude whatever way I want. So you're not going to become a man that she respects. You're going to become just a plaything. It's like, okay, I know if I call him, he'll take me out to lunch. So, girl calls you up. Oh, and this used to happen to me because I used to be a yes man. And, girl calls you up and you're like, oh, hey, how you doing? Blah, blah. Oh, great. Yeah. So what you up to? Oh, nothing. I'm just hungry. Right. She's not telling you to take her out to eat. She's just letting you know she's hungry because she already knows, oh, I know this dude likes me. He's going to offer to take me out. Oh, well, you want to go grab something to eat? Oh, no, it's okay. You're probably at home chilling, right? She's got to sell you on the fact she doesn't want this, right?
So it was your idea.
So it's your idea. That's right. So get you to do what she wants and make you think it's her idea your idea at the same time. So here I am, like, getting played, and I'm like, oh, yeah, sure. No, it's no problem. I can come on. No problem. I got plenty of gas. Don't even worry about it. I'll pick you up. So here I'm driving 30 minutes, picking this girl up from her house to take her out to eat, pay for the food. and bring her back.
Someone sounds bitter.
But I learned my lesson. So when I got back home, it was like it just hit me like a ton of bricks. Like, Sebastian, what'd you just do? It's like this girl just said she was hungry. Now you done took 2 hours out your day, $50 out your budget, because this girl said she was hungry, and you're like, oh, this is my chance. When it's in actuality, if the girl's like, oh, I'm hungry, I'm like, well, you don't cook? Like, you're like,
Okay. It's the lecture Bible.
But I'm saying that because Candace knows I would actually say that.
Yes.
That is actually what I would say, because that's who I am as a person. I would say, look, I'm not going to drive 30 minutes to come pick you up, take you out. You got a full kitchen, pantry, accessible to you. So go ahead and work your magic. Call me back when you're done. We can talk later after you eat. And in my mindset, it's the reality that if I know I have things going on, I can't be going out of my way, because I know on a regular day in real life, I'm not going to do that. So I'm not going to try to win you with that, knowing that I'm not going to maintain it.
Right.
That's very, very important. So for God is like, I am not going to accept your sin now, and I'm not going to accept your sin ever. And so this starts off by asking practical questions. Number one, you and I need to define very clearly what are our deal breakers. What are the things that you are not going to tolerate? No matter what. Not now, in your boyfriend, not in a future husband. I will never tolerate it. And, we used to say in sports, playing basketball or American football, there was a saying among the coaches that I will never accept in a win what I would never accept in a loss. So he says, if we lose the game and you were messing up, I'm not going to accept it. But if you do the same thing and we win the game, I still won't accept it, because it was always unacceptable. And for me, that taught me a very serious lesson. Sebastian, even if the result ends out positive, this was still never acceptable to the coach. You're never going to come back to practice and he's like, hey, coach, we won the game. He's like, yeah, but you was acting like a knucklehead. So we didn't win because of you. We won in spite of you. That's the difference. And so in the same sense, you got to look at it and say, even if this guy becomes an amazing guy, whatever, you're not going to accept it in a loss. You're not going to accept it in a win either. Those are the things that you have to come to grips with. Number two, also notice the individuality component. This is something that, Candace was just touching on in terms of God recognizing himself, who he is, who he's always going to be. Relationships are never, ever to remove our individuality. When you feel like a person is trying to change who you are, that is a clear red flag. You need to leave that relationship. When I feel like I have to change to be with you, when I feel like I have to be someone else in order to stay with you, then I know this is a red flag. It's time for me to go. Mm-hmm. We had some friends that were dating, and they had different philosophies about music. And, they're active Seventh-day Adventists, all that, but they just did not agree on what was acceptable music. And so one of them is like, oh, I want to go to this concert and hear this artist, this gospel artist. And the other person's like, I'm not really feeling it, but I'm going to go just because, I want to achieve unity and peace and maintain the relationship. And so the other person is clearly noticing while they're, celebrating, they're having a great old time, celebrating in this particular event. And the other person just sitting down like,
looking really awkward.
Looking awkward like a deer in headlights. Like, where am I? Why am I here? Oh, no, are you having a good time? Oh, yeah. It's great. It's like, clearly you don't like the music. And so in this point in time, it's like, you don't have to stop being who you are in order to be with someone. And in this sense, God recognized, I'm not going to stop being God. I'm not going to stop operating on the same principles and values that I have, just in order for us to be together. God is going to find a way for us to be together and yet be 100% who he is. That is God's ultimate goal and always the thing that he's trying to achieve. So when someone's not respecting your individuality, it is definitely high time for you to move on from that relationship. That is a clear red flag. It's time to stop. You got to move on. And I don't think that we can say really enough about that particular thing. Let's go to the New Testament verse we wanted to look at in John chapter 14, verse 15. It's a very familiar verse. John chapter 14 and verse 15.
It's probably one we could recite together.
Right.
If you love me, keep my commandments.
That's right. Notice that Jesus says, if you love me. So here he has the condition. If you claim, if you believe that you love me, then this should be the resulting behavior and actions as a result. Then you need to keep my commandments. Now we understand that God has 10 commandments. And those 10 commandments reveal that which is valuable to God. I was talking to a young man last night, and he was asking me about, he doesn't really know what he's looking for. He doesn't know how to decide, what to be looking for in a woman and all this kind of stuff in a relationship. And I said, the first thing you need to do is define who you want to be as a man. You have to define what you value first. Once you define your values, now you can say, this is the man I am. This is the things I value. This is the man that I'm going to be, so that whenever they hear the name Sebastien or whoever, these are the things that are going to come to their mind. This is a man that is this. This is a man that is this, because these are my values and I'm operating within my values. And therefore, I cannot be with someone who's not going to respect those values or doesn't value those things as well. So if God is one of my central values, is that I need to have a deep spiritual relationship with Christ. And a woman that doesn't respect that, we cannot be together. Because this is who I am, and a part of who I am and what I deeply value, you do not value. And so Jesus, you can say you love me, but if you love me, you got to keep my commandments. And the commandments of God serve as clear boundaries for a relationship with God. That's how we know we have not violated our covenant with him. So when we think about this text, a lot of times we use it to try to push people to keep the Sabbath. But in its very deepest form, when Jesus is here talking about the Holy Spirit and maintaining a relationship with him in terms of prayer and God hearing your prayers, you can't go to your significant other and do things that are clearly hurting them, that are against their values, and then expect to come and ask them for things and they're going to do that for you. It's not going to work like that. So if my wife feels like, you're clearly disrespecting me, you're clearly going against my personal values. Oh, but babe, can you do this for me? But can you do this? And it's different, right? When you're married, you're having a completely different conversation. Mm-hmm. But when you're not married, Candice is like, I don't have to do this. I don't have to put up with this. Because this is a clear value for mine. And if you cannot respect my values, now, what's going to change when my last name becomes yours? Mm-hmm. Nothing's going to change if you cannot respect it now. So God clearly sets a very defined boundary around what he would accept. The statement, I love you. Well, if you love me, show me. Right. Let me see it.
And this, like you said, is a non-negotiable, right? Mm-hmm. It just reminds me of a personal story, a relationship that I had where the other person, we were engaged, actually. And the other person, he had just met a new friend from a program that he was about to begin. And, all right, cool, you met people that are in your program. That sounds great. So we're back home, and we're talking on the phone, and he's like, clicks over to find out who it is. It's this friend. I'm like, oh, great, you guys are keeping in touch. Oh, well, actually, can I call you back? You want to call me back? I'm your fiance. So, first you may be like, okay, maybe they have something really important to talk about, but it keeps happening again and again and again, right? There's a problem, right? Amen. Red flag. And so...
Well, his loss.
But to illustrate this point that as a conversation came up about it, not a very pleasant one, but a conversation coming up, well, why are you putting this person before me, right? And so from his perspective, he's like, well, what do you mean? You're allowing her to go before you. And I'm thinking, well, hey, wait.
Sorry, girl, you can break out that patois. She said, hola.
But the real issue here was that emotionally, I felt like he was not caring about how his actions were affecting me emotionally, right? Granted, if what I was thinking was out of bounds or what have you, we can talk about that, but your actions need to change to show that, you respect or you see where I'm coming from.
Yes,
right?
That's right.
And that served as a clear indication of how he would, if this thing were not to change, if he always thought that if I became upset about something that was different to what he thought, that my response was over the top and, excessive and he could just ignore it. That was a no-no.
That's right.
And that was a red flag to just stop.
Because you clearly see that, he's not trying to respond to your emotional needs.
Right. And that's a need that I have.
And I think sometimes when we think about God, we don't realize that the 10 Commandments don't just affect God in principle, they affect God emotionally. God, we can grieve the Holy Spirit. And because we can grieve the Holy Spirit, that means the Holy Spirit has feelings. He can be discouraged. And in this sense, sometimes we don't think about violating the 10 Commandments as emotionally damaging God. This is not just a great controversy and the theological, you're theologically correct in what you are practicing. You're morally upright. This is actually injuring a person that has intelligence, that has feelings, that has emotions, that has values, that has invested a lot in your relationship together. God has invested everything in us making it to heaven. He's put it all on the table, knowing that most people are not going to make it. That's hard to even imagine, that God has put himself in that position. So in this, context, not responding to a person's emotional needs is damaging. And, from the guy's perspective, I remember talking to this one young lady that I was interested in. We never actually started a relationship. And at the time, I was not as self-aware to realize that as a man, women can talk to you in a way that makes you feel like you're not worthy of respect. They can make you feel like, you know what? I can talk to you any kind of way, tell you whatever I want to tell you, talk down to you, be condescending, always emphasize your faults. And the guy walks away feeling like, man, maybe I'm not worthy of respect, or, she's right, I deserve, I don't deserve her, I'm obviously, marrying up, I'm out of my league. And she's so graciously allowing me to be in a relationship with her. But it's true. And so in this sense, as guys, we also need to be very careful of also recognizing women who are not respecting our emotional needs. We may not talk about it as men because we want to be hard and we want to be, I'm a man, so I don't need emotional support, lie detected. So you do need emotional support, because women don't realize how deeply they can damage a man. And that's important to recognize. Just by words, just by actions, just through sexuality, all these different things. Because a lot of guys, they find out a girl is not a virgin. The whole reason why guys start acting weird about that is because of their own insecurity. It's the fact that, she slept with someone else before, so does that mean she's going to compare me to him? Does that mean that, I'm thinking in the back of my mind, he was better than me? So we start doing the comparison game. And then we don't really trust her affection. We don't really trust her love. We don't really believe that she just loves us, not because of anything she's doing, but because of our own insecurity. And if we're not aware of that, and we're not in a relationship where a woman is respecting that particular emotional need, such as the need for respect and the need for that kind of trust and confidence in the affection, then again, it becomes a red flag. You have to step away from that relationship as a man. Because if you feel like a woman does not respect you, you got to keep it moving. You have to move on. Because if she's not respecting you now, she will definitely not respect you later on. That's 100. I mean, it's going to be worse than what you see right now.
Right.
Because once you get into the burdens and the cares of life, at that point in time, when people are under stress, they do not become creative or innovative.
We go back to our
that's right.
default.
We go to the default, and the default is, I don't respect you. Now, I may have to innovatively, creatively try to let you know that I respect you, but once I get stressed, you know what? I don't respect you, and it's like the woman we said yesterday, with the marriage and family therapist. I was better off without you. And that's a hard thing to say to a person, and for them to swallow, and some people never recover from those things. So when we think about red flags in order to end the relationship, one, you want to make sure people are responding to your emotional needs. Two, you want to make sure they're respecting your individuality as a person. And your individuality is distilled into this phrase, right, from the book Education. Your power to think and to do. If a person is trying to change your ability and control your ability to think for yourself, have your own opinion, and to choose your own actions. Because guess what? Until you're married, you're not married. Amen.
Amen.
That's just the rule. I don't care if you see this brother, he's my boo, my bae, whatever people say these days. I'm like, well, until you marry, you're not married. Even the day of the wedding, you walking down the aisle, you're not married. So if you're having doubts in your mind, you're like, you know what am I doing? You just got to turn back down the aisle.
Just stop.
That's right. Just stop and say, you know what? I can't go forward with this. And last but not least, they are not respecting your boundaries. And we talked a little bit about boundaries yesterday. Defining those things that you do for a person that communicates to them that they're different, but also your boundaries to recognize certain things you are reserving for your husband or for your wife. And ladies, I just have to say this because as a guy, I wasn't always a Christian. And so I understand that sometimes as men, we can be very persuasive in situations. We can be very convincing and we can play on your weaknesses. And so because of that, any guy that's pressuring you to violate your own personal physical boundaries, you just need to cut it off and run away from that situation. You got to leave. So it's like, well, why is this guy pressuring me to kiss? I don't want to kiss. He's pressuring me, to have sex. I don't want to have sex. That's a clear, unequivocal red flag. You just got to move on. You say, look, I'm sorry. You're clearly not respecting my body. You're not respecting my boundaries. It's like, well, and then this is where it gets difficult, ladies, because you may be thinking in your mind, I actually want this to happen. Because if you really like the guy, you may be tempted to violate that boundary. But here's the thing. You are not your own. Jesus bought you at an infinite price. So now you're not dealing with your own commodities. You're not dealing with your own goods. You're dealing with Jesus's goods. So because he bought your body, he bought your mind, he bought your affections, you need to make sure that you're giving it to where Jesus wants it to go. And you can say right there in that situation, Jesus would not want me using the body that he purchased for this action right now just to make you feel like a man or to feel like I love you. If that's what you need to go to see a counselor. You don't need a sexual encounter. You need to go see a counselor and walk through and work through your personal issues. But that's very important that we don't allow ourselves to be pressured to violate our boundaries. Now, let's talk a little bit about the other side of the coin, which are things that we can do in order persisting, right? So now you're in a relationship, you have challenges, but these are challenges that, you can actually work through. So we want to start off in the book of John, chapter 1. You said what? Okay. John chapter 1. And so we look in verse 14, this text about the incarnation of Jesus Christ. So in John chapter 1, verse 14, the Bible says, "And the Word was made flesh, and dwelt among us, and we beheld his glory, the glory as of the only begotten of the Father, full of" what? Grace and truth. So I want you to notice, right, that throughout the entire book of the Gospel of John, whenever people met Jesus, the first thing that they were meeting was the Word of God, right? This is the Word made flesh. The second thing that they were meeting was grace. And the other thing that they were meeting was truth. Jesus was full of both of these. So in essence, when you see the man by the pool of Bethesda, who has been in this condition for 38 years, and he comes in contact with Jesus, he's having a moment in time with grace and with truth. Jesus doesn't just walk up to people and start healing them. There's always a certain revelation. There's always a certain truth that he's bringing to them in order for them to have their healing. So he doesn't just go to the man and say, hey, you've been here 38 years. Okay, hey, rise, take up your bed and walk. He says, do you want to be made whole? And the man says, oh, there's no one to draw me in the water. And Jesus is saying, your reason why you're not healed is not because you don't have human help. It's not because someone is not willing to take you down to the water. The issue is your desire. Do you want to be made whole? I didn't ask you, how come you're not whole? I didn't ask you what's keeping you back from the water. I asked, do you want to be made whole? Now that's ironic, right? To ask a person of 38 years in a condition, do they want to be healed? What do you think they're going to say?
Yeah.
Of course. So why is Jesus asking that question? He's trying to reveal something to the man in terms of the truth about himself. I cannot restore you until you also have the desire to want to be healed. You have to want to be whole. Mm-hmm. And again, in essence, this is how every miracle in the Gospel of John took place. This is how the power of God was revealed in every encounter. So when we're dealing with conflict in our relationships, we always start with this baseline of these three things. The first thing is time. You need to have time in order to work through issues. Number two, it's going to require grace. You got to be willing to be forgiving. You got to be willing to give people the benefit of the doubt. And number three is going to require truth. There's got to be honesty. There's got to be 100% assessment of the situation, calling a spade, calling sin, sin. So when we start off moving beyond, this person is not violating your boundaries. This person is not, pressing against your individuality. Those are all red flags that let you know you need to go. But now you're in a relationship. They're respecting your boundaries. They're respecting, your individuality. And they're also allowing you to, continue to be who you are. And they're accepting your honesty. There are still challenges that come in your relationship. Mm-hmm. And that may cause you to pause, because a red flag is saying, if you don't deal with this problem, this relationship may not last.
Right.
And you need to pause and replay. You gonna say something?
No.
Okay. So when we go forward in John chapter 1, and we want to look in which verse you want to start with? Verse 35? Mm-hmm. Okay.
Again, the next day after John stood, and two of his disciples, and looking upon Jesus as he walked, he said, Behold, the Lamb of God. And the two disciples heard him speak, and they followed Jesus. Then Jesus turned and saw them following, and saith unto them, What seek ye? They said unto him, Rabbi, which is to say, being interpreted, Master, where dwellest thou? He saith unto them, Come and see. They came and saw where he dwelt, and abode with him that day, for it was about the 10th hour. As we go down to verse 40, one of the two which heard John speak and followed him was Andrew, Simon Peter's brother. He first findeth his own brother Simon, and saith unto him, We have found the Messiah, which is, being interpreted, the Christ. And he brought him to Jesus. And when Jesus beheld him, he said, Thou art Simon, the son of Jonah. Thou shalt be called Cephas, which is by interpretation, a stone. Mm-hmm. And so here in this illustration, we see that John had been baptizing, right? John had been baptizing in the wilderness, and he had his own disciples, and he was baptizing. The reason John was baptizing was because whoever he baptized, because God told him that this was the way that the Messiah would be revealed, right? Whomever the Spirit descended upon and stayed upon, that would be who the Messiah was. So John was here preaching and teaching, trying to get individuals into the water to baptize them so that he could see who the Messiah would be. So the disciples that were with John were also waiting and wanting to see who this Messiah would be. So they were looking for the Messiah. So while John is walking with his disciples and he sees Jesus and he says, "Behold the Lamb of God," the two disciples hear him and they start following Jesus. Right? We may think like, man, you just absconded? You're a leader like that?
Right.
But the reality was they were with John because he would lead them to Jesus. And then again, we see this pattern again. Now, those two disciples, they follow Jesus. And then one of them, Andrew, the Bible says that he first goes and he finds his own brother. And he tells him, "Look, we found the Messiah. Like, we really found him." And he brings his brother to Jesus. Now, the interesting thing that happens here that really is impactful is the fact that when he brings his brother to Jesus, Jesus does something, right? The Bible says that when Jesus beheld him. So Jesus didn't just take a casual or hasty look at him. The Bible says he beheld him. And when he beheld him, he said, "Thou art Simon, the son of Jonah." He told him who he was. And then he says, "Thou shalt be called Cephas," which is by interpretation a stone. So Jesus sees him as he is. He tells him who he is. And he also tells him where he's come from. And in our relationships, this is something that we have to do too, right?
Right.
When we get to a place where we see that challenges are coming up, I don't really know how to engage with this.
We have to first start by kind of defining the norm of where Simon Peter came from. Because we're seeing that when he brings him to Jesus, Jesus says, "This is who you are right now." And this leads us to the first point, that one of the reasons why conflicts come in relationships, even after people are respecting your boundaries and it's all, everything's going well on those areas, issues still come up because you come from different norms. So it's like, you are Simon, this is who you come from, you are the son of Jonah. So whether it was culturally different, whether you were raised in a household that was different, there was a certain norm of how you engage when conflict happened. There's a certain norm of how you express yourself. So all of a sudden you may be thinking like, okay, why is this person acting this way about this particular issue? Why is it that she's getting in a mood every time this goes on? And you're like, well, this is a norm that she's coming from. This is the place that she is starting from. So we have to first be very clear in defining that norm. And this is why it's so important to get to know each other's families and get to know each other's kind of baseline, like, this is how you normally carry on. And a lot of times when you go home, what happens, right? Your family starts telling all your business. Oh, Sebastian's like this. And it's funny because when Candice came to my apartment, the first time when we were engaged, and it was ironic that, she's like, oh, wow, this place is nice, it's very organized, right? Then we go to see my family, and my mom's like, Sebastian can't clean to save his life. He's like a mess, whatever. You're like, Mom, like,
I've changed, I've grown.
Exactly. Like, Mom, I'm a 30-some-year-old man. Like, I can clean my own place. The last time I saw you, it's just... Then, of course, your brothers and sisters are, throwing all your stuff out there. But this is important that's on a very basic level in terms of, cleaning. But we can get to even higher levels that this person struggles with pride. Or this person can become very defensive when you start talking about their dress. Or they become very sensitive when you start talking about spiritual things. And it's like, well, what are you trying to say? You're trying to judge me? Like, don't judge me? It's like, wait, why do you think I'm judging you? And I've had an experience with this that was very scary. Early on in my Adventist, shortly after I was baptized, I was dating this girl, and she liked to wrestle and fight and everything. And she's like, Sebastian, you were a Marine, So she thought, I could just do whatever, Sebastien will somehow figure it out. So this girl is jumping on me like randomly in random places, like wanting to wrestle. And I'm like, what is the deal? Like, and so one time we were at my apartment, and here we go again, right? I'm sitting there and we're just hanging out, talking. And all of a sudden, I go to get something from the kitchen, like some water or something. I come back and boom, I'm just tackled like on the floor. And this girl's trying to wrestle me down. I'm like, what are you doing? So eventually I'm like, enough is enough, right? So I'm like, boom, I'm about to turn on this marine button. So I'm like, get this girl on the ground. I have her pinned down. And she's like throwing water on me and all kinds of crazy stuff. I'm like, man, this girl is cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs. Like, she's out of her mind. So I'm like, you know what? Since you want to play around. So I'm pinning this girl down. And I'm holding her legs down. And I'm like, I'm going to pour this water on your face. Whatever. And she's like, stop, whatever. And I'm like, no, I'm not stopping because you won't stop. All of a sudden, this girl just like breaks out into like uncontrollable crying. And I'm like, oh, snap, I'm going to jail. So I get up off the ground, and this girl's like crying and crying. I mean, she's literally crying for like 20, 30 minutes straight, uninterrupted. So I'm sitting on the couch like, man, I don't know if this is demonic possession. I don't know what's going on. Because her whole face changed. Like she was 5 years old. And after this setting, after, everything calmed down and, grace and truth. And so we sit down and she starts telling me how she used to suffer things from the way her brother would treat her. Right? He would like bury her in the laundry and she couldn't breathe and all this kind of stuff. And just really bad traumatic stuff that she went through at home. So this whole thing of wrestling and wanting to play fight all the time, this was her norm, right? Her older brother was the one that, she's always kind of being physically and aggressive. And so in her mind, it's like, oh,
this is how we show affection or love.
Exactly. So it's like, oh, I like you, we're cool. So boom, I'm going to jump on you, throw an elbow on you and all this kind of stuff. And you're kind of like, how about gentle touch? Like,
gentle.
Amen. Yes, I am gentle. So, but it led you to recognize that understanding her norm and what she's bringing to the relationship created a scenario where, for me, I'm kind of like, man, why is this woman behaving this way? But you have to clearly define this is the norm of where you're coming from.
And the reality is that we each are coming from different family situations. And, we're so quick to kind of detach ourselves from home and say, like, I'm this new person. And yes, we are growing into that. But a lot of what we experienced at home is what has shaped us. That's what we know. And that is our default, right? And so not only is it defining it for each other, but also the other person seeking to find out or to figure out how those norms play out in your context, and it gives them gives you or whoever, it gives them the ability to see or to understand why things are happening the way that they are. And then we can progress, or we can go into this together and figure out, okay, how are we going to establish a new norm?
That's right.
Just because this is how you showed affection before doesn't mean that that's the way that we need to show affection to each other.
Correct.
And so those things, that norm that you had, we can change it and we can establish a new one. And so recognizing that for the other person gives us patience and, some kind of level of empathy to understand, where you're not just thinking this girl's cuckoo,
right? But
you're coming and saying, I see where you're coming from, and so let's work through this.
And so here we have defining your current norm. So when you're having a conflict in your relationship, define the fact of, okay, what is my normal? Like, why do I feel like this action or this conversation was normal for me? It's normal for me to get upset if you do this, or I called you, you didn't call me back, or I texted you, you didn't text me back. Like, why is that a problem for you? Because for me, it's not a problem. Because it's very interesting that, Candis and I are very much like this. It's like, I always feel like whenever I need to reach her outside the house, she's not near her phone. Then when I'm home, I feel like she always has her phone in her hand. So I'm like, I'm at the Social Security office. They're like, we need your wife's Social Security number. Yeah, 1 second. Just ring, voicemail. I'm like, how is this even possible, right? And so, but it's ironic that I'm over here getting frustrated because I'm expecting that if I'm out the house, you need to be able to reach me, right? Candis, that's not the norm in which she operates. But if she leaves the house, I always feel like I need to be able to be accessible in case she needs to call me or she needs to reach me, because that's how my family was. In Chicago, things happen. So you need to be able to be reached in case there's an emergency. Versus Candis doesn't operate on that. It's like, oh, I'll catch you. So if she calls me and she misses me, she's not frustrated. It's well, I don't know. Maybe you are frustrated. But okay, just want to make sure. So she's not frustrated. And for her, it's like, okay, well, I'm just going to go do what I need to do. And, I won't be able to get his input, right? Versus for me, I'm kind of like, babe, I need your input. Like, I need to get your input. So I'm paralyzed in the store trying to get shoes for our daughter or something, but I can't reach Candis. Because for me, it's like, if I come home and I did not talk to her, and she's like, babe, why did you get these shoes? Babe, I called. You did not answer the phone. I'm sorry. I was tied up with it. So for me, it's like, this is my normal. And initially, that will create conflict between us. Because it's like, well, I'm getting frustrated. It's like, you coming home, and now here's your norm, right? You come home, she's there, and then, of course, what is she doing when I get in the house? She's on the phone. So now you're even more annoyed. So you walk in the house, slam down the groceries on the counter, like, we start huffing and puffing, like you don't want to tell the person you're upset, but you upset. Then, you sit down, you're on your phone, and then she's like, oh, babe, is everything all right? Yeah, it's fine.
Having a moment of catharsis now.
Right. So you're having a moment, and then she's like, babe, clearly what's wrong? And, it's like, babe, I called you, I tried to get you, and you're just waiting for her to say something about the shoes. She's like, well, why did you get these shoes? Well, I tried to call you. You did not answer. It's like, hold on a second. Where is all this frustration coming from, Sebastien? And this is coming from the fact that I'm operating on a specific norm. So once I define that norm, now she and I have a conversation to decide on what's going to be our new norm. Because we are coming together as two individuals that there's no other two individuals like us. So we can't just say everything's going to be like Sebastian's family, everything's going to be like Candis's family. No, we're leaving our father and mother, we're cleaving to each other to establish a new family.
Mm-hmm. And when we say like our families, we're saying patterns of behavior, patterns of thought. This is the way that things roll. This is how we normally behave, we normally think, we respond in this way. So just to articulate that. Coming from one family to the next, we both have different patterns of behavior that we're operating from. And coming together, we have to establish a new pattern of behavior that is the same for both of us. Our own pattern, a working pattern.
That's right. And that really inspires us to say, you got to have a willingness to grow. You have to be committed to saying we need to develop a new norm. So that becomes the next step. So after you define the current norm, you decide on the new norm. Now you have to have a pattern of developing that new norm. So when Jesus comes to Peter and he says, you are Simon, that's your current norm. And you are the son of Jonah. So that's where you came from. This is how you develop every approach that you're bringing to this relationship with Jesus. So the fact that you're looking for the setting up of the kingdom of Israel to be exalted among the nations again, where would Peter have learned that? He would have learned it from his dad. He would have learned it from his community around him. Hey, Israel one day is going to be great among the nations. This is where he heard all the prophecies. This is where he learned about the Messiah. So all his convoluted views of what Jesus was supposed to do, these were norms that he inherited. Mm-hmm. And this is what put Peter in conflict with Jesus. Because now he's following Jesus. He's in a relationship with Jesus. But his concept of what Jesus ought to be doing does not match what the Bible says, and it does not match actually what Jesus is doing. So it's like, well, why is he doing this? And we can see it even at the end of Jesus' life, when Jesus is ascending back to heaven. Peter's with the disciples, and he's like, Lord, will you now restore the kingdom to Israel? It's like, this brother, are we still on this? You thought I was going to restore the kingdom. I died on the cross. Now you were discouraged, you were broken. We thought he was the Messiah, We thought he was going to restore the kingdom. No. It didn't happen the way you thought. Then Jesus rises from the grave, comes up, and now we're talking for 40 days, and now we're back here at the same conversation. Peter still has not abandoned this. So can you imagine 3.5 years with Jesus did not change this norm? It took serious time, serious prayer, the outpouring of the Holy Spirit, and even in the book of Acts, he's still choosing Jews over Gentiles. It's still awkward for him to go to Cornelius' house. God has to give the man a vision just to make him willing to go. And all of that bias, all that prejudice, where do you think it came from? It didn't come from Jesus.
Mm-hmm. It came from the context in which he was in.
His norm. Mm-hmm. And that took all that time and relationship to develop, to bring it out of him and to help him to see something broader. And we can honestly say that from what we see in the Bible, we don't know if Peter ever fully got over it. Because he was the one that said, yeah, Paul should go to the temple and be cleansed, which is what got Paul arrested. Because they saw, hey, this man was with Gentiles, now he's in the temple. And Peter was the one that, hey, Paul, we understand, yes, God is witnessing to the Gentiles, but when you come to Jerusalem, maybe you should go through this cleansing. And that's what got Paul arrested, when he should not have had to do it. But because Peter and some of the other brethren were still struggling to let go of this particular norm of where they came from. So here we see that you have to decide on this new norm, but it's going to take time and a process to develop that new norm.
And I think sometimes there is conflict that comes up over that norm. Even with Peter, there were times when he was in conflict with some of the other disciples.
Yep.
As they were figuring out how Gentiles would be included in this ministry.
Yep.
And so with us, we too have times where things come up and it actually brings up conflict. Yes, we want to develop this new norm, but developing this new norm is not an easy thing. Yes, it takes time, but it is hard to actually engage with each other. Mm-hmm. And that's where we have conflict that many times arises. So perhaps we should talk about some of those
conflict
rules of dealing with that.
Rules of engagement.
Yes.
So Candice and I, usually when we do counseling with couples and we do conflict resolution, we take the philosophy that a great part of a successful relationship in marriage is your ability to solve problems together. And if you're not able to solve problems together, you're going to struggle in your relationship. And so we look at conflicts in two different categories. So one, we'll talk about where they come from. And then the second thing we'll talk about are some rules of engagement, some principles you can use so that when conflict arises, how do we talk about it? And what kind of parameters do we set so we can address this in a nice, Christian, holy, amen, don't lose your sanctification in this conversation. So first of all, we always say that all conflict comes from what?
Unexpressed expectations. Expectations that we kind of keep in our mind. We just expect things to go this way because that's how they go. And we assume that that's how everyone else does it. Mm-hmm. But we never express it. But then when someone does not act according to those standards or those expectations, we get upset, right? And so these unexpressed expectations is predominantly a place where a lot of the conflict comes from.
So first you have unexpressed expectations. Now can you imagine God doesn't tell Adam and Eve that they can't eat of this tree, then Adam eats of the tree and then God just appears with judgment? Can you imagine how that would go? So Adam's just eating of the tree. God never said don't eat of the tree in the midst. And then Adam plucks the tree and boom, the sky gets dark and all of a sudden there's lightning and flashes of thunder. And what have you done? You've eaten the tree. It's like, hold on a second. You never told us to what? Not to eat of the tree. Mm-hmm. Then why do we do this in relationships? So we get in a relationship and it's like you upset about something. You may not even been told the person that you expect from them. So how can I fulfill an expectation I don't know exists? So if you don't tell me, well, I expect you to call me to let me know when you get home. If you don't express that, but then this is how the conversation actually goes, right? The guy gets home or the girl gets home, and then they're there for a while, and then they get a text message. You're not going to text me that you got home? Hold on a second. Like, you're already starting off in conflict. Mm-hmm. I mean, you all felt it just when I said it. You look at your phone, you're not going to text me that you got home safe?
Somebody said that before, that's why. Somebody texted.
Then the person responds and say, oh, yeah, I got home safely, sorry. Okay, well, Can you remember next time? Sure, I'll try to remember next time.
Now we're trying to express expectations without fueling conflict, right?
That's exactly
and
right.
And that's a big part too, not expressing your expectations in the midst of a conflict.
Correct.
Right?
And that's very common among minority cultures.
Caribbeans.
Yes. Africans. So you come into a situation and it's like your parents are treating like you should have known. It's like, well, how could I have known? You never said. Well, you should have known. How could I have known? Don't be disrespectful. It's like, somebody know what I'm talking about? Okay. So, in this very sense, it's creating a scenario where it's like, of course you're upset because you had an expectation for me to behave a certain way. And let's be real, right? We talk about, hey, make sure you approach each other's parents and express your intentions. But what happens when you bring a girl home, right? And then it's like, I come home, I'm like, hey, mom, this is Candis, da-da-da-da-da. Oh, Candis, where are you from? I'm from Trinidad. You couldn't find a Jamaican?
It didn't happen to us.
It didn't happen. That did not happen. My mom is complete opposite of that. Mm-hmm. But I'm just using it as an example to say, here's my mom going to say in that moment, here's this expectation. So now I bring this person home. I'm like, well, mom, you don't have to marry Jamaicans. Like, it's okay. It's like, oh, you couldn't find a Korean? You couldn't find an African? Why do you have to go to these people? It's like, what is the problem? Because you have an expectation in your mind you have not expressed. So on one level, conflict comes from expectations, and the first type are unexpressed. Then obviously, if you don't express an expectation, the person is not going to realize the expectation. So the second source of conflict are unrealized expectations. So we see that man and God arrived in conflict because man did not live up to God's expectations of obedience. Mm-hmm. That he would actually not eat of the tree that was in the midst of the garden. And it's the same in our relationships. So you have unexpressed, unrealized, and then the last one is unrealistic expectations. Candace has never had any of those, so. Because she believes all her expectations are realistic. If you were Superman, and this would not be a problem. But anyway, so you're dealing with the fact that when you're in the middle of a conflict, so we're having a conflict in our relationship, the first question I should have is, what was my expectation? Why am I upset? So let's use the texting me when you get home example. So let's say she gets home, she doesn't text me. So first of all, I'm in my feelings. So I'm like, man, this girl did not text me, man. I don't know if she got home safe, whatever. So now, and I'm about to text, like, you can't text me when you got home? It's like, wait, slow down. Pause the text message. Ask yourself, what was your expectation? My expectation was when you get home, you text me that you arrived home safely.
So the text is, can you please text me when you get home?
Right, before. But then I asked myself, did I express this expectation to her? So did I do that? Did I ask her to text me when she got home? So if I didn't, whose fault is the conflict? It's my fault. So you follow that. So you notice how getting rid of your pride and your selfishness, Ellen White says, will remove most conflicts in 5 minutes. Because we have to start and just say, well, Sebastien, you never even expressed this expectation. How can you expect a person to live up to a standard they don't know exists? Can you imagine there's no stop sign and the police officer pulls you over and says you were supposed to stop there, but there's no stop sign? Well, you should have known to stop. How would I have known to stop? Normally, if you want us to stop, you put a stop light or a stop sign, but you did not put one. Well, we expect you to stop. Thanks for letting me know. So now, every time you come to an intersection, what are you going to do? You're going to stop because you don't know, maybe they're going to pull me over. This is the same thing that happens in a relationship. Mm-hmm. So when you do it that way, the person starts feeling like they're on eggshells. That's not a very healthy relationship.
Right.
You're not going to be happy in that relationship where you feel like everything could be a conflict. And you're overanalyzing all your behavior. You're not able to be yourself. Mm-hmm. So first you ask, did I express it? Then the second question I ask myself is my expectation realistic? So I have this expectation, you should text me when you get home, that you got home safely. Did I express it? No, I didn't. Well, is it even realistic to expect this? That's my next question. And if I'm like, well, and it's funny because we all think our expectations are realistic.
For sure.
For us. But the reality is you may find out in conversation that it's not. Mm-hmm. So then now I understand why I'm upset is because my expectation was not realized. Either because it was not expressed or because it's not realistic. Are you following that? So they didn't fulfill it because they either didn't know it or they don't believe that it's realistic. You have a question?
Yeah, sorry. What if the person lives up to your expectations because they like you?
So you're saying, what if they do that?
Yeah. So
What's wrong with that?
no, because what if that's not what they want to do, just because they like you?
Well, I think that goes back to what we were saying earlier, which is if they're not being themselves, right, that's one level. But on another level, when you're in a healthy relationship, there's always going to be compromises because I love you. So there are things I'm going to do because I love you.
So when we're saying them being themselves, being their fundamental selves, because we all are in a process of growth, right? We don't want to just be this way 10 years from now. We're all growing. Mm-hmm. But there's some things about us that are core and essential to who I am as a person that will not change. And so once they're not changing one of those core values of themselves, then those things are fine.
That's right.
Because of the compromise that's necessary.
Yes.
For any
So it's okay if they're saying, because I like you, because I love you, I'm willing to adapt. But as long as they're not changing fundamentally who they are. That's very, very important. So as you're going through this process, these are the questions that we guide ourselves through so that we don't come in swinging, right? With the bazooka out, ready to blast each other. And all of a sudden, we're going to take a little this little molehill and turn it into a big mountain of an issue. When if I just simply thought, Sebastian, you never even asked her to text you, so why are you upset? But it's different if I said, hey, babe, can you text me when you get home that you got home safely? And then she forgets. Now you can say, hey, I never got your text that you got home safely. Are you home safely? And then she's like, oh, sorry, I forgot to text you. Now, if that happens 100 times, you may start getting frustrated. But again, here's your expectation. Is it unexpressed? Is it realistic, etc.? And you go through that process. Now, let's talk about some rules of engagement, right? So now you've had a conflict. She didn't text you. You don't hear from her the rest of the night, and you see her the next day. And you're obviously bothered that she did not text you when she got home. Babe, why are you smiling? It's okay. She's like, I'm going to talk to you at the hotel.
I'm feeling it right here.
So, in terms of rules of engagement, Candis and I, we kind of adopted a little amalgamation of things that, some of our friends have done and things that we've developed for ourselves to say that when you get into a situation where now you need to resolve a conflict and you need to talk about those expectations, is this realistic? Did I express it? Did I express it well? Did I express it clearly? Did I agree when you expressed it? I mean, it gets really complex sometimes. So you need some rules of engagement. Mm-hmm. So one of the rules are...
just before you went into the rules, I was going to say, because also conflict is something that some of us, we don't feel comfortable engaging in. It's like we'll do everything to avoid it, right? But if we have some rules that we both agree upon, then we know that we're going into this conflict together. It's not something to be afraid of. It's just a way that we can come to some kind of resolution together, that we're on the same team and we want the same outcome. We're not here to attack each other. We're just coming to resolve this together.
That's a beautiful point. We say in design that contradiction is the mother of clarity. So it's like a lot of times we're afraid of contradiction, but contradiction is how you get clarity. Because in design, if I put a white square inside of a white circle, you will not see the square. It's only when it's in contrast that you will see it clearly. And this is the same thing, is that when we have conflict, God is trying to bring clarity for us in our relationship. This conflict is an opportunity. It's not a way to beat the other person down or be like, I'm going to win this argument. That's not what this is about. This is about clarity. And sometimes that clarity is, you know what? I don't know if we're going to work. Maybe we should take a break. Or sometimes the clarity is, man, you know what? Maybe I should just text her to see if she got home, and she'll just let me know when she can. And maybe I should stop being worried that because she didn't text me, she's upset, or she's some dangerous thing happened. It's like, sometimes, Sebastian, her phone died and she couldn't text you. So you don't have to assume, man, I should call the police. She didn't make it home yet. It's like, relax and calm down because you're dealing with your norm. This is where you came from. So you have to be very careful how you're adapting that into your new situation. So rule number 1, when you're dealing with conflict resolution in your relationship, rule number 1 is no interrupting each other. A lot of times when people are getting into a discussion of disagreement, Oh, yes. Pray first. Yes, baby.
Sorry.
You should absolutely pray first.
Sometimes, I know, we may
Kid is like, I need prayer.
We may over-spiritualize things, but sometimes, depending on what norm we have come from, as I said before, conflict may not be this thing that we either are shy away from or something where we just come ready to just box someone out, right? And so, where we're trying to engage in a godly way, we just need to call upon the name of the Lord to just redirect our minds, remind us again that we're working through this.
Amen. And we're on the same team.
In the same team, yes. And we're going to do it with some class and dignity. So.
Amen. Yes. Start with prayer. Start with prayer. Number 2, no interrupting each other. A lot of times, when we interrupt the other person, we're communicating to them that what you have to say is not important. And when the person is already hurt, already offended, you're just making the situation worse. So now it's like, not only did you offend me, now you're not even hearing me out, you're just interrupting me or you're talking over me. And you're like, I'm not trying to hear what you're saying. What you're saying has no value. That goes back to red flags. So now you're not respecting my individuality. You're not respecting my emotional needs. And therefore, this is not healthy. So you know what? I need to move on. And a lot of times, this comes from different cultures adopt these things in different ways. Because in the Caribbean culture, nobody lets anybody talk. People just talking over people.
Yeah, whoever's loudest.
Whoever's loud, that's exactly right. Who's ever loudest. So it's like, well, Sebastian's the preacher, so he's going to be the loudest. So he's going to make sure he's heard, or I'm the biggest, or I'm the strongest. So it's like you're going to sit here and express your dominance because a lot of times we cannot be vulnerable without conflict, right? Without these blowing up and all this. So this is how I have to express my feelings. So rule number 2 is no interrupting. Mm-hmm. Rule number 3 is, I don't know which one I want to do next.
Just do that.
Okay. So rule number 3 would be, after no interrupting, is you need to stay on the subject of discussion. A lot of times, when we're having a conflict, we like to borrow conflict from other conflicts. So it's like the person kind of got you in a corner and it's like, yeah, you're wrong. So you're like, well, what about this other thing? You were wrong about that. So we need to make sure that we stay on the subject. And this means not only staying on the topic literally, but it also means no personal attacks on the other person. Don't tell them, this is who you are. You're always like this. This is always what you do. See, you're just a disrespectful person. That's not helping. So now you're just making it worse.
Right.
So no sweeping statements, and that's staying on the topic. We're here to talk about texting when you get home. We're not here to talk about you a lazy person, you're forgetful, you always forget everything. We're not trying to...
One issue at a time.
That's right.
Stay on topic. The other thing is not pulling out. Sometimes we can...
Shut down.
We can shut down. Whether, we don't feel like our point is going across. We don't feel like they're really understanding. Or we're just like, I'm done. I don't feel like engaging anymore. I'm tapped out. So we kind of just shut down like, okay, yeah, whatever. Okay. That is also not helping.
Yeah, I see some guilty faces out there. Because exactly the point is, this rule is so important because we can get to the point where we feel like we're not being heard, or this is not really progressing the way we like it to progress. So then we just shut down and just say, okay, fine, whatever. You're right. We don't really believe that you're right. This is just our way of exercising our control again. Which is, you know what? I'm going to end the conversation. So, Sebastien, do you see? Yeah, I see. I got you. No problem. All right, next time I will do this. I will text you. No problem. So, what I'm doing is I'm pulling out. I'm not actually resolving anything. You're actually making it worse. You're just burying a problem that's going to pop up again with greater passion and fervor. So it goes from, hey, we had a little leaking, to now this thing's about to become a geyser, to now this thing's going to become a volcano. And eventually it's going to explode and disrupt everything. Simply because we never resolved these particular conflicts. So there's absolutely no pulling out, staying on the topic, no interrupting, and no raising your voice. That's number 5. No raising your voice. Tone is everything. People don't realize that 80% of communication is nonverbal. It's not what you say. So we feel like you should hear what I'm saying in my mouth, but I'm so busy looking at your facial expression and your body language that what you're saying is a lot more than what you're saying. It's like, no, you don't understand. I love you. That's why I'm telling you. It's like, can you just, your whole body language is not communicating that you love me.
Or like, I'm sorry, gosh, leave me alone. You know?
Right. Yeah, no. The rolling of the eyes, you know. It's like, whoa, okay.
The extra neck.
Right, the extra neck movements. It's like,
yeah.
This is a very, very important thing that with the nonverbals we recognize. So the irony is that if you are actually holding the person's hand or you're actually in physical contact while you're having the conflict, it totally helps keep the mood calm. Because your nonverbals are communicating love and gentleness. But you see, when people are standing at a distance from each other and they're engaging, it's kind of like this is me versus you. But if I'm over here taking your hand, or I got my arm around you and we're talking about the situation,
can't help but be like, okay.
Right. You know, it's not like, oh, you're kind of melting, I love him, and you know. No problem, babe, I'll text you, okay, I'm sorry. It's like, so it doesn't really work out that way all the time, but you know, gives you a bump in your percentage, your success rate. But the nonverbals are very important. No raising your voice. Be very careful with your nonverbals. And that's a very huge thing. So that as you're developing this new norm in your relationship, this is going to allow you to do it in a way that's healthy, that's affirming, and that you're protecting one another. Mm-hmm. And last but not least, you're defining your current norm, you're deciding your new norm, you're developing this new norm by using conflict resolution, understanding expectations. And last but not least is you're directing the person to Jesus. We see that Jesus is the one that changed Peter's name. Not Andrew, not Peter himself, not anyone else was able to see what Peter would become and could actually start working with Peter to transform him. So a lot of times when we're dealing with conflict resolution, yeah, we want to go through expectations. Yeah, we want rules of engagement. But we need to spend a lot of time praying for the other person. Mm-hmm. And a lot of time interceding for them. There's so many different times that I can name in our relationship where there was something that was going on between us, or there was an issue that I had, and before bringing it to Candis, because you also don't want those kind of people that are loving conflict. They just want to bring every issue up, every little thing. You got to be careful you don't indulge in a critical spirit. Right. Well, now you're just criticizing everything the person does. And so I would just take time to pray. And it was crazy how I'd be praying about things and Candis would just come to me. And, you know, we'd be going to bed or we'd be hanging out. And she's like, babe, you know, I was just thinking that, you know, I should text you, you know, when I'm getting home, just to let you know that I got home safely. And you're like, in your mind, like, man, this is crazy. I was just praying about this thing in the morning because Jesus is able to reach her heart in a way that I cannot. And so bringing this person to Jesus, the person who can actually transform them, is absolutely the best thing that you can do. After you've done everything you can humanly do, now you have to put it into the hands of God. And so these are kind of the things that we believe you can process. Yeah, I can take your question. We have to wrap up.
Okay. I remember we had this topic at our church in Ukraine, and this married couple, they said that they agreed to disagree. What's your take on that? And second, they said when it comes they make a decision that the man will make the final decision. What is your take on that?
So I think so yeah, I understand. Mm-hmm. So I think that in a relationship where you're married, right? To me, those questions are appropriate in a relationship where you're married. So if we're married, now you're looking at a completely different context and how your conflict is even coming about. Because we're committed to a long-term relationship. So everything we do is tending that direction. So when we talk about agreeing to disagree, I think in this space, we look at it as these things are usually non-essential. Like, should we have pasta, or should we have rice? It's like, we can agree to disagree. Like, I like rice, she likes pasta. It's like, okay, so one night will be pasta, one night will be rice. Like, that's what it's going to be. When we deal with certain areas of the home, there are certain areas where we say, okay, if Sebastien, and Candis and us we're having a disagreement on something or how something should go, mm-hmm. She would say, well, Candis would say, look, someone has to be the leader. Someone has to make the decision ultimately and be accountable for that decision. And so there's certain areas that we would say, if Sebastien says this, then that's just what it's going to be. But at the same token, I trust my wife and I respect my wife. So I don't need to be, yielding the card of, well, the final decision is mine when it gets too complicated. That's a little ambiguous, right? Mm-hmm. Because, well, how do you define complicated? What areas does that really apply? And what happens when my wife has the Bible and the spirit of prophecy behind what she's saying? Mm-hmm. So at the end of the day, in our house, Jesus is the one that has the final decision. Mm-hmm. So if that's what the Bible says, it doesn't matter if I'm the man of the house, because Jesus is actually the man of the house. Mm-hmm. And I communicate that to my wife and to my kids. Just because, yes, Papa has a certain level of responsibility and authority, but at the end of the day, if you see me doing something that's not right, you have all license to be like, hey, Jesus says you need to be kind. And right now, you're not being kind. So just because I'm the dad doesn't give me license. I'm not above the Bible. So when you're dealing with things that are of non-principle, now you're saying, okay, how do we want to make those decisions together? Because ultimately, I'm not there to rule over my wife. I didn't marry her to have a servant.
Right.
I didn't marry her to have a constituency for me to oversee. I married her to be a partner with me.
Right.
So,
and I think that partnership is important. That partnership, the one where you know that person trusts your ability to make decisions as well, right? Or your contributions to this. So if there's a complicated issue that may come up, I know that my input in this area is going to be well received, well taken, and it will be incorporated into whatever, if it is something that I leave to him to figure out. I know that whatever decision he makes, it's taking me into full consideration.
Right.
And so I have complete trust in what he does. And the same thing, he may give things and say, babe, that's up to you. So again, it depends, but I think also remembering that we're in this together.
And that's a good point, because one thing I learned, through my marriage to Candis is that for men, a lot of times women feel like they're not going to be heard. Right. They're not like if I don't say it, he's not going to ask me. Or if I don't my input. Right. If I don't fight for it.
If I don't fight for it, then whatever I want is not even going to be
considered. Mm-hmm. And a lot of times it's actually the reverse. The more that you affirm a man's role of responsibility, the more he will consider those who he's responsible over. So it's like, if I know I'm the manager, well, you're the manager, so what are we going to do? Everybody's looking at you. Now you realize, you don't want to be the manager that everybody hates.
Or that messes up.
Right, or that messes up, because they're going to say, well, you made the decision, you the manager.
Fool.
Look at your mess. So as a result, a lot of times as women, we don't realize that if a man respects you, the very fact that you're saying it's your decision is automatically going to impress him to say, well, I'm not making this decision because I'm better than her, right? Because at the end of the day, Candis could end up doing what she wants to do. I could be like, well, this is my decision. She can be like, yeah, whatever. When he goes to England, I'm going to go do what I want to do. That could totally be the case. So you don't have absolute control. And in that scenario, that's not a happy home. Right? Mm-hmm. You're coming back and the people are saying, yeah, we just do this when he's here. But when he goes to work, we're going to do what we want to do. So you want a scenario where by me feeling my responsibility over these individuals, I am humbled and overwhelmed by the fact that I don't have the wisdom to manage. So I always am going to make sure, because I am being affirmed that, Sebastian, this is your responsibility. You're responsible for the spiritual leadership of our home. So if we're not having family worship, if we're not doing this, it's like, well, or people don't like family worship, I'm responsible. So what are you going to do? So in that sense, affirming a man or a wife's responsibility over something is always going to lead them to want to include the other individuals in that decision-making process. But in that sense, that's where I think it's most appropriate. Well, just keep your questions, because we're going to go into a Q&A session, because I see people are ready to ask questions. So let's go ahead and pray as we conclude, and we'll take a break and then go into our Q&A session. Okay.
Loving Father in heaven, we thank you so much again for being present with us. We thank you for the ways that you have outlined and given us guidance as to how we can have a relationship that thrives and that reflects what heaven had intended them to. And we pray, Lord, that by your grace, that you will help us to continue, to commit to being willing to grow and to change according to your ways. And that, Lord, you'll help us to have empathy with one another, and that you'll also help us to know who we are in you first and foremost, so that we can help others, so that others know who we are and how to engage with us as well as your children. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen.